Hello, I am Dawn Westmoreland, hailing from Asheville, North Carolina, the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains, hailing from WPVM FM LP 103.7. We are community radio, grassroots radio. My show is syndicated with the Pacifica Network, so over 200 radio stations can pick up this show. I am so honored because I have somebody right here in Asheville. I've already met her in person, Marisha MacMarron. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, MacMarron.
Yes, awesome. Now, Marisha is the executive director of Food Connection, and we're going to get in that just a minute. And you might say, well, what does that have to do with the workplace? Food Connection is a wonderful, not only process, but strategies, a nonprofit that's been created to help people who are economically challenged. And guess what? When you get help with that and you're having a hard time getting to work or the money to get to work, the gas, it's really so important. Marisha, welcome. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today, Dawn.
Love for you to tell our listeners what Food Connection is about and how did you get into it?
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you. So, Food Connection's mission is to reduce waste and ease hunger in our community. And we do that by rescuing surplus, unserved, prepared food from catering companies, institutions like retirement homes and universities, conference centers. And then we redistribute that food to the community in need. And we do that in a couple of ways. We transport large pans of surplus food directly to agency partners who serve the community through shelters in the city, welcome tables, open tables, church groups, homes. The Black Mountain Home for Children is one of our recipient partners, the Veterans Restoration Quarters and Transformation Village. And then also we take some of that food and repackage it into individual meals. And then we distribute directly to the community, heat and serve nutritionally balanced meals with our new mobile meals truck, which looks a lot like a food truck. And that is the two ways that we connect this food with the community.
Now, I've had the pleasure of meeting you because I'm in Leadership Asheville, which is number 41, and I believe you were in it years ago. How many years ago?
I was in Leadership Asheville 36.
36, so about 5 years ago. And my group, there's 8 of us, we're here to support you, Marisha, because we believe in what you're doing. So can you give a little background about why this is so important? Maybe you want to share a backstory why you got in it.
Yeah. So I will start with just, throwing out some statistics that aren't always as well known about food waste in our country. It's estimated that as much as 40% of the food produced in the United States ends up in the landfill. And that equates to about 108 billion pounds of food is wasted each year in the United States. And at Food Connection, we strongly believe that no fresh food should end up in the landfill while our neighbors don't have enough to eat. So I got involved in Food Connection at its inception in 2015. I was the operations manager of a large catering and event production company in Asheville, and I received a call from Flory Pate, who was the founder of Food Connection. And she also, her family has Dig Local, which is a marketing company that markets local businesses in Asheville. And she had called to talk to us about the potential of marketing the catering company. And it wasn't the right fit for us at that time. And she said, well, I have you on the phone. Do you ever have leftover food? And I said, we do. And she said, if you had a place to donate that, or if we came and picked it up to help serve the community, would you be interested in that? And we said, absolutely. Because we would always send food home with the staff. But the nature of catering is that you always have to have enough food on a buffet that there is plenty when the first guest comes through, and then there is plenty when the last guest comes through. And so the nature of catering and serving large groups is that there's always food left over. So that is how I got involved in Food Connection. Celine and Company was the catering company I worked for, and we came on as the second food donor partner after Pax Tavern and the Century Room, which was the launch partner. Now, this mission is particularly dear to me. When I was growing up in rural Pennsylvania, my family had a restaurant. And my first memory of serving the community, I was probably 8 or 9 years old. And on Thanksgiving and Christmas, my family would all go to the restaurant and we would prepare holiday meals and we would distribute those meals to the rural community before we went home and celebrated our own Christmas or had our own meals. And I will never forget the impression at such a young age, the first time that I ever experienced true food insecurity and poverty, where we were driving out into the far reaches of rural Pennsylvania and giving meals to folks who might not have their electricity turned on, or that were homebound seniors that didn't have a way to get out of their house. And that made such an impact on me at a young age. When this opportunity came to get involved with Food Connection, I was thrilled to be a part of it. So, as at the beginning of 2015, I started to take these leftovers to the beloved house when that was still downtown, and I would go so far as to go and pick up my son from kindergarten. He's in 6th grade now, and pick him up from kindergarten so that he could go and experience that with me. So I stayed involved as a food donor partner. When I left that job, I came on to Food Connection as a part of the board of directors, and I was the secretary as well, and did fundraising and special event and volunteering until May of 2021. I came on full time as the executive director.
I appreciate you sharing that background. I know it's so important. I know I shared with you earlier that I grew up in North Florida in a very rural area, the second poorest county in Florida, which is Putnam County, and I've seen it with my own eyes, the need for help and support, and they don't always have these resources, and people do go without. So thank you for sharing that. Is there anybody doing your kind of work, Marisha, in the United States that you're aware of?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There are some great food rescue organizations across the country in that we go to conferences with, we share resources and ideas with. And we were actually in 2017, we mentored a group of women out of Charlotte who heard about what we did. And for a while, they operated as Food Connection Charlotte, disrupting food waste in Mecklenburg County. And since then have become their own 501(c)(3) called Feeding Charlotte. And they do this work there.
That's a catchy name. Yes. Now, with inflammation, I got inflammation on the brain. Inflation. We all have inflammation, I think. Inflation, cost of gas, food is out of this world. Has that increased your workload?
Yeah, so I'll tell you briefly how we came to launch our mobile meals program, and that's what I spoke of at the beginning of the segment in distributing individual meals. So March 2020, when pandemic shut businesses down, surplus food rescue came almost to a halt, with the exception of a few donors like our retirement homes that were still serving. Restaurants, our big catering companies, everybody closed their doors and food was not as available. So we pivoted our model, as so many businesses and nonprofits had to do during the pandemic, to purchasing chef prepared meals so that we could continue to serve the community. And we were graced with a large anonymous donation to support this effort. And that was earmarked to work specifically with Wicked Weed's Cultura restaurant. And at the height of the pandemic, we were distributing 5,000 meals a week to the community. And
Wow.
we were able to reach, this was the first time that Food Connection served directly to the community. Before the pandemic, we only took pans of food to the agencies that served the community. And we had curbside drive-throughs. We did an industry hero drive-through every Saturday, where furloughed workers from the restaurant industry could come and get meals. And, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, before unemployment started coming through and the stimulus checks, people were really in a tight spot. So we were able to do an incredible amount of work in collaboration with the YMCA, and we had other organizations that helped us distribute. And then you fast forward to spring of 2021, businesses started to open back up. And at that same time, our funding to purchase chef meals started to run out. So we thought, we'll go back to what we were doing before. And that
Yeah.
sounded great in theory, but the reality of our work is that every day we were having to make phone calls to say, we can't bring you meals this week to this community and to that community. And that didn't feel right to us.
Yeah.
So we launched a pilot program in July of 2021. And we experimented with repackaging rescued food into individual meals. And that was wildly successful. And the concept for the mobile meals truck was born. So as we had to kind of re-examine where our priority and our focus area was, we Manna Food Bank here that serves all of Western North Carolina is a great partner and resource for us. And we reached out and said, talk to us about the need. Where do you see it the most? And how can you help guide us in who gets served? So doing a deeper dive into food insecurity statistics in Western North Carolina, we learned, well, one thing that we already knew was that Buncombe County has a food insecurity rate of between 13 and 14%. So that's about 37,000 folks right here in our county don't always have enough to eat. That's a staggering statistic. That is a lot of people. If you do a little bit deeper dive into that number, what you learned is that 29% of those folks, about 10,000 people, are experiencing food insecurity and they don't qualify for assistance.
Oh, goodness.
So again, we talk about the rising cost of food, gas, and the cost of living in Asheville. So many families are struggling to put food on the table. And these oftentimes are working families who, after they pick their children up, they get done with work and they pick their children up from after school, they're not going to the food banks or they're not going to the welcome tables or to the shelters for meals. And they're kind of just left out and fall in that gap. So with our mobile meals program, that is what we are focused on, reaching folks that have that need, have a high need for prepared food, nutritious food, and who don't have easy access to it. And so we have just launched our mobile meals program this summer, and we are connecting those meals in the community through after school programs, affordable early learning centers, directly into mobile home communities and curbside drive-throughs in places that we've identified that, again, have a high need and not a lot of access to prepared food.
And I've been here 17 years in this area in Asheville, and I've seen such a change. You've been here a while too, and it's become a very expensive city to live in, and food is something we just can't give up.
That's right. And so to speak to that as well, there's one of the big parts of the work that we do are dispelling myths around food insecurity and food waste. And one thing that we see often is the misconception that food insecurity looks a certain way. And, Asheville has a large population of unsheltered folks who are downtown, and we have a lot of resources downtown for our unsheltered folks as well. There's a place every day of the week that you can go and get a meal. And that doesn't look the same for folks who live outside of the city limits. Again, folks who don't qualify for food assistance. And I'll share with you one thing that's really important for Food Connection since our inception and still today is we serve everybody with no questions asked. That means if you come to get a meal, we don't say, well, Dawn, how much money do you make and how many is in your family and what's your zip code? We serve everybody who comes to us. And during the pandemic, we had a woman come through our drive-through, our weekly drive-through in Swannanoa, and she came every Saturday and got 2 or 3 meals, and she was very lovely and thanked us and came back every week. Well, after a few months, she came back and she gave us a check, a donation. And thought, And she shared with us at that time that her need for meals wasn't necessarily because she didn't have money to buy them. She was an elderly woman and she was going through chemo treatment and she had no family around. Wow. And she did not have the energy to cook.
Sure.
So those meals meant so much to her because it gave her 2 or 3 nutritious heat and serve meals that would last her for several days. And then that was also a celebration of community. That was the only time that she saw somebody besides her doctors in a week. And what a difference that that made for her. So, we don't judge anybody who comes to us and to the truck. And another level of that is that we are also work towards disrupting the concept that sharing food is is sometimes viewed as just a charity or a handout. Our food
Mhm.
truck it's brightly colored. We have music, we have lights, we have a menu board with options, and so it's true service with dignity. So when we're at an after school an after school program, it doesn't have that solemn feel that sometimes a soup kitchen or a welcome table will have. But the kids,
Sure.
they just love running up to the truck and saying, we want chicken and salmon and pulled pork. And this is food that comes from the Omni Grove Park Inn. It comes from UNCA, Pax Tavern. Some of Asheville is known so widely for our food scene
Yeah.
here. And it's just such an incredible gift to be able to share that. And then also for children that are experiencing food that otherwise they may not have experienced. We have kids that, like, I didn't know that I loved acorn squash and salmon or crab cakes or, kale salad. And so it's just a great experience all around.
What a powerful story. Thank you for sharing that. And, you know, I'm a daughter of a mother who had breast cancer and almost lost her life. So I can appreciate sharing that story, all the chemo and the lack of energy. Now, most important, because I know it takes energy, it takes time, it takes volunteers and money. I don't know if I'm missing anything, Marisha, but how can people help you with your mission and Food Connection?
Yeah. So first and foremost, financial support. We are always raising funds and writing grants to support the work that we do. We are have to work a little harder than some other food distribution organizations because we don't take qualifications. And so we can't be a part of Feeding America funding and things like that. So a lot of our contributions come from private donors and businesses and through our fundraising efforts. Now, when we look at, again, the quality of food that we're rescuing and serving, you will go to a restaurant and pay $30, $40 for a meal that we can rescue, repackage, and distribute a healthy heat and serve meal that's a pound and a half of delicious food for about $2 per meal. So the financial support is critical to keep our mission moving forward. And then if you're in the Asheville area, we're always looking for volunteers that help us move food from point A to point B, to repackage the food into the individual meals, and then also to go to our distribution sites and help us share the food with the community. And part of Leadership Asheville 41 that we're working with right now is helping us strategize on a plan to expand. Our goal is to disrupt food waste in all of Western North Carolina, because we know right now we're a little bit slower. We're not in peak wedding season and tourist season, although we have holiday parties. So the food rescue is slowing down a little bit, but we'll rescue anywhere between 1,500 and 3,500 pounds of food in a week. And that is incredible. And that feeds a lot of people.
Is.
And we know that still there's food ending up in the trash that is perfectly good food. To date, Food Connection has distributed more than 485,000 meals in our
Wow.
area.
It's
And
amazing.
in doing that, we have kept more than 165 tons of food out of the Buncombe County landfill. And so there's that environmental piece too, because fresh food rotting in the landfill is a major contributor to greenhouse gases.
Why? Now you have done so much research in your team. It's just amazing. Are you wanting this program to expand into other communities outside of Western North Carolina?
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably 5 years ago, we had a thought that there will be a Food Connection in every city. And we realize that Food Connection will maybe just stay a little bit more local, but we're always open to helping other organizations or other groups that feel inspired, just like those ladies in Charlotte, put the pieces together to be able to do this work. One of the biggest parts of what we do when we approach food donors or we look at new markets has got to be an education piece. When we call a catering company or especially bigger, corporate entities and say, do you have surplus food? We would love to come and rescue it. One of the most common responses we get is the question of liability. I can't do that because if somebody gets sick, then I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to be liable. And that prevents so many organizations and businesses from donating food. And so we educate them that we operate under federal protection under the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Food Donation Act that was passed into law in 1996 by the Clinton administration. And that protects businesses from liability if they're donating their food in good faith, saying that it's properly been stored and it's labeled, that if somebody were to get sick, that they would not be held liable. And to the best of our knowledge, that has never been challenged in court. And currently there's a bill right now that's got bipartisan support. It is the Food Donation Improvement Act that expands on the language in the liability protection that would make it safer and encourage more food to be donated to nonprofit organizations.
That is so encouraging to hear, because I imagine there's a lot of restaurants that, because they don't know better, they don't realize that they can help, they can support. And now that this bill is out there, I hope that will open up more opportunities for you. So let me ask you, what's the best way to contact Food Connection if somebody wants to donate or if they want to volunteer?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is food-connection.org, and you'll find donate buttons at different places on there that make it super easy to donate right through our website. And then through the contact form, you can reach out directly if you have more questions or if you want to volunteer, then we'll connect you with our volunteer coordinator or just talk with you about your interest and your passion and to see, how you can get best plugged in.
Yes. Marisha, is there anything else you'd like our listeners to know about Food Connection?
Oh, I know we were on a time crunch, but we could, there's always so much to share. And, if you're listening outside of Western North Carolina, just inquire, poke around, do a little research. Is there anything like this happening in your area? While Food Connection has a little bit more complex model because of our mobile meals program and our food truck, what we find is that in less densely populated areas, it is less about food and food service than it is about connection and logistics. So if you have a conference center or especially a university in your area that is serving a buffet, it's almost guaranteed that there's leftover food. And then looking around to see if there's, what efforts to connecting that food to the community are being made through a church or, a Salvation Army or a shelter in the area. And then you find the volunteers that help move that food from one place to the other. And it really just helps everybody. It reduces that waste and that impact on our environment. And then, we've been able to feed 485,000 meals in less than 8 years with a very limited staff and the power of our volunteers. We could not do it without our volunteers and our community support. So you just have to care and have a little bit of passion and you can get this, going in your own community. And then if you're already in a place where there's a food rescue organization that's already there, find out how you can get involved, because it's a simple concept, but it takes a lot of love to make it happen every day.
Well, I know our listeners will love what you're saying because, we see it all around us, no matter where we live, homelessness, people struggling. We hear about struggling stories. Do you have a story about anybody that was able to have more money, just to be able to get out, look for a job, or to be able to have the gas to get to work? Because my goodness, gas prices are out of this world.
Dawn, there is not one story. There are 50 stories that from what we see every week, especially now that we are directly in the communities, and especially at the after school programs and the early learning center, that families are coming to pick up their children, and then to have that food, that's money. If you're picking up 3 or 4 meals, and that's money that you can spend on gas, that can help with your living expenses. We see families all the time that have to make the decision: do I put food on the table, or do I buy life saving medication, or do I pay my electric bill, and how do I make those ends meet? And then also, I will say this not just for the community that we directly serve, but the volumes of food that we share with our nonprofit partners, because all the nonprofits are all doing the same thing. We've got to find money. We've got to write grants. We've got to do
Yes.
fundraising. Everybody got the
Money.
emails on Giving Tuesday. So when we share that food with the Salvation Army and the Rescue Mission and our nonprofit partners, it allows them to free up their resources for programs like mental health and substance abuse counseling and housing and transportation. So, whether it's from an agency perspective or on an individual perspective, just having that food makes such a difference when you look at, your overall budget. And I just want to say again, this food is delicious. It's amazing. It is made by some of the best chefs in Western North Carolina, and our community, be it through an agency or directly to individuals, are just always so thrilled to have this food shared with them.
That sounds wonderful, and I'm not known for my cooking, so it's so nice to know that people are receiving nutritious food, and I know Asheville has some of the best restaurants, the best chefs, the best cooks, the best staff and such. Now, let me ask you, Marisha, if somebody came up to your food truck, where the different locations you go, and they say, "Hey, could I get 5, 6, 7 meals because my neighbors need food," and you have that. Is that something that they can do?
Well, that's not something that they can do. That's something that we do very often. So every single week, we have at least 5 different people in the community who will come at a scheduled time, and they will take meals to their homebound senior neighbors, take meals to folks in their apartment communities. And so it's great if it's a larger volume so that we can prepare ahead of time. Now, if somebody, and it depends on the distribution, if somebody comes, say, to our Swannanoa drive-through, where we usually have about 180 meals to give out every Saturday. And if the first person in line says, "Can I have 20 meals?" and we hadn't planned for that, we'll say, "Let's start with 7. And if you come back in, 30 minutes, then we'll be happy." But we want to make sure that we have enough for everybody. But with several of those people in the community, we're prepared for them every week. They'll come and pick up 20 meals, 30 meals, and take them to their neighbors. So absolutely. And that's really great, especially for folks who may not have transportation, or, may have a difficulty driving or getting there. So it's great. We see people really love to share these meals with their neighbors.
That's so impressive. And I know that most people are really good at heart, and sometimes they just need a little bit of direction. As we wrap up this interview, it just goes so fast. Again, do you mind giving out the contact information, how to get a hold of you or Food Connection, different places they can find out about Food Connection?
Yeah, absolutely. Please follow us on our social channels on Facebook and on Instagram. Instagram, we're Food Connection WNC. We're just Food Connection on Facebook. And then our website is food-connection.org. And you can get in touch with us through the contact form on our website. And of course, that donate button is there, so don't be afraid to click it.
That's awesome. And you said you have volunteer opportunities. They can volunteer by reaching out to your website and your information.
Yes, absolutely. And
Yes.
another thing too, because this is really exciting now that we have the mobile meals truck, is it gives us an opportunity to expand our volunteer opportunities. And so it's a great opportunity for children too. I have my son who's 12 now, loves to be packing meals and helping hand out meals. And there's just something truly beautiful about witnessing children sharing resources with other children. So that's really great family volunteer opportunity. And then also, if you're a business in Asheville, Nashville and you support volunteer opportunities for your staff, reach out to us. We have a great partnership with New Belgium Brewing, and they love to support their staff in volunteering. So we take the truck right to the brewery, and their staff
Oh
will go on
boy.
break, or they'll send out a wave of the staff to come out and pack meals, and they don't even have to leave their property.
That is amazing. That is definitely thinking outside of the box. You don't even need to have a box. That is fantastic. As we wrap up, Marisha MacMarron, Executive Director of Food Connection, please reach out to her. The mission is very empowering, helping people, people helping people. Thank you, Marisha.
Thank you so much, Dawn. Thank you to
To
all
our
of us.
listeners, stay empowered.